everybody, and thank you for joining me today. It's Allan Laboucan with the Rocks and Stocks News website. Today we have a regular guest, one of our sponsors, i-80 Gold. The reason they're a regular guest is they keep having good news out. Since we last spoke, they had a couple of really good ones out that I want to talk to Ewan about. But before we get started, I wanted to mention that they've had a pretty significant breakout lately. I thought it was very oversold and cheap for a long time, but now it's starting to get a better valuation, and I think it's probably consistent with this news and the recent action in gold. So we'll talk about all of that, Ewan.
Sounds good. Let's go.
Okay, so we've been talking a lot in the last several interviews about your drilling at Granite Creek. One thing that I've noticed is the continuity, and that high-grade gold is in close proximity to the underground workings. On February 23rd, you announced that you've commenced underground mining at Granite Creek. Let's start there.
Yeah, well, we had some delay in getting our Cubex drills. So Cubex are essentially reverse circulation drills that can drill flat from underground. So we can drill a lot of holes to define these ore bodies. They're significant alteration systems, and really it's more proximal to the faults that run. So it's not like an easy to follow Canadian quartz vein. So the Cubex drilling is quite important for us as we move into mining, to make sure that we limit our dilution as we get into these high grade ore zones. But the Cubex drilling was delayed. We didn't get our Cubex drills in until December. We were hoping to have them in September. And so that delayed our startup of mining because we wanted to have that definition before we gave a green light to going ahead. And now that we've got essentially 5 levels drilled out in the initial mining area with the Cubex, we have now announced that we're proceeding with the development of that area. And we have that interim processing agreement with Nevada Gold Mines. So we want to start delivering material to them as soon as possible in order to start getting gold and cash flow.
And when do you think that might be? You in a ballpark estimate?
I think we're targeting our second shipment probably later in the second quarter. There is a minimum amount that we have to ship in the first shipment. It's 10,000 tons. So while we develop this first level of 5 that we're doing in the current area, we will be stockpiling, and once we get the 10,000 tons, we will ship it immediately north to the Twin Creeks processing facility, and then following that, we expect more regularly deliver mineralization as we ramp up our production here.
And one of the things that I've always admired about you and your team, Ewan, is you kind of take an old school method of mining, and this underground drilling will sort of be able to keep you ahead of your underground workings, which is how mines are built.
Yeah, we just want to make sure the previous operator at this property really developed the mine with limited cash. So they under drilled it before they started trying to mine, and that resulted in excessive dilution, leaving ore behind in certain areas because they couldn't pinpoint exactly where it was. And we just wanted to be sure that we didn't repeat those mistakes. So with our very strong balance sheet, we've been able to do it on a more methodical approach, take a more methodical approach to developing the ore body. And now that we feel comfortable that we're in a position that we know what we're getting into, we've started that development. We've also had tremendous success, like you said earlier, in our drilling, and we've actually increased our drill programs. We have multiple surface and underground drills, expanding the mineralization, particularly at depth where it remains wide open. And I'd say 90% of the holes, as you said, continuity, drilled to depth have intercepted mineralization in excess of 10 grams per ton. So it's looking really good, and we're forging ahead. It's one of the check marks in our comprehensive plan we announced about a month ago. We wanted to put it out there that for us to be successful we've got a multi-year growth plan, that we have to be we have to hit major milestones all along the way. So we didn't try to hide what those were. We put them out there, and today we announced that we've started up McCoy Cove, which is the second of 4 projects we're looking to develop.
And you know a lot about McCoy Cove because you've been involved there for quite some time now, Ian.
Yeah, we've had that for over a decade. So we acquired that from Victoria Gold and Newmont years ago, and successfully delineated one of what is now one of the highest grade gold deposits in North America. The Cove underground deposit has a grade of nearly 11 grams per ton. We permitted it for underground development, but the reason we didn't proceed with it under Premier Gold Mines banner was because we didn't have, it's a refractory deposit, we didn't have any way of processing it. And not only recently have we acquired the autoclave from Nevada Gold Mines, but they have provided us an interim processing arrangement until we get our own facility up and running that is allowing us to proceed with development. So that's why we went ahead with Granite Creek. We're now started mining there, and now we've started development of the underground at McCoy Cove in order to complete an underground drill program and advance the project to feasibility. And hopefully late next year or early the following year, we'll begin the underground development into the ore body, and it will become part of our growth plan going forward.
And if my memory serves me correct, when you guys first got that project, that was the main focus, was to look underneath the old workings, and you guys were very successful in finding something quite significant, which is another in those old school mining ways of doing things that you guys follow, is to find assets at good prices and then enhance them with the truth machine.
Yeah, that's I guess you could say I'm an explorationist at heart. So I love exploration. We'd followed the Cove project under Victoria Gold years ago, and they had some issues with their resource work that they did. But in our opinion, or my opinion, when I looked at the work they did, they had this sort of celery stick model, and I didn't agree with it. I thought that what they were probably drilling is more likely a bedding parallel Carlin style deposit, and they were getting the mineralization they were modeling is you get these feeder faults, and they were lining up some of the mineralization to feeder faults, and in my view they hadn't interpreted what was there or was correct. And as we did our due diligence, you could see a lot of drill intercepts. Let's say it was at 400 meters, were between 390 and 410. There were intercepts, so that told me that what they were intersecting is a bedding parallel zone. So when we acquired it on that premise that it was misinterpreted, and immediately we demonstrated it was a bedding parallel deposit, and it grew from a couple 100,000 ounces to today where it's almost 1.7 in all categories, and I think a really strong chance that it's going to grow past 2 million as we continue to expand at depth.
Can you tell us a little bit about, if you've got this more flat lying than to mine this stuff, how is it easier, Ewan?
I wouldn't say it's easier. When you use gravity, it's always a little easier, but we are in these the Nevada deposits are often associated with fairly strong fault structures. So the ground conditions can be challenging, and when you're mining vertically, you can get some caves. So I wouldn't say either way is easier than the other. You just have to employ a bit different mining methods. At Granite Creek, the mining we're doing there, the zones are more vertical. So we are mining a different method at Granite Creek as we will employ here. But the El Nino mine that we traded with Nevada Gold Mines to get our autoclave, we were mining sort of the bedding parallel there. And if you look at our announcement today, John Laird joined our team, and John Laird built that El Nino mine. So this is essentially identical to El Nino. It's a flat line, more or less a flat line deposit immediately adjacent to an open pit. So it's essentially the identical project. And El Nino was built on time, on budget, performed well for us while we owned it, and he was the guy who managed the build, so he knows what he's doing. And we went out and I guess recruited him to join our team.
Well, you're not having too much problem doing that lately. You've had a lot of good guys joining your team of the last year.
Yeah, well, the sum of the parts is what's going to make us successful here, and we need to have a top-down tier one team. And we've been quite fortunate so far, not only in the upper management, but down throughout the middle management and right down to our employees, building what I feel is one of the best mining teams you'll find anywhere in the business.
So Ewan, can you tell us a little bit about these flat-lying bodies? Is it that the fluids make their way up and then spread out into rock that's, able to receive that fluid?
Yeah, it's just there's really the limestone units are the most favorable bedding. And so there are these basically vertical fault structures. The fluids float up. They hit two different rock competencies, and you get these collapsed breccias, et cetera, along the contact. But the mineralization sort of goes that way along when it hits that bedding, and that's why we find these flat-lying structures. And then there's two of them so far at Cove. There's the Helen Zone, which is the upper mineralization. Then there's the Gap deposit, which is sort of on the same stratigraphy, but just faulted and offset a bit. And what's really different is both deposits have different geochemistry. So they were likely both fed by different faults. One is more amenable to autoclave processing, and one is more amenable to roaster. And that was really the beauty of the agreements that we struck with Nevada Gold Mines, is that they have provided us with processing, guaranteed processing at both autoclave and roaster, whereas we've acquired just an autoclave. So once we get the autoclave going, for Cove to be successful long-term, we still need roaster processing. And they've agreed to give us 750 tons per day of processing at the roaster. And that will allow us to develop the Gap deposit. And so we're in, we put all the points in place to be successful here. Now it's just our team's job to execute. And
do you have some analogies, Ewan, of the size that these bedding units can be?
Well, if you look at Granite Creek, immediately north of us is the Turquoise Ridge mine. It's in the same stratigraphy, same rock types. We're essentially the on-strike extension, and Turquoise Ridge is now between production reserves, I believe close to 25 million ounces. So we're drilling right beside one of the elephant deposits in Nevada. That deposit goes down to about 5,000 feet, and we're still drilling up 1,000 to 1,500 feet. So the down dip potential is quite good. And what happened at Turquoise Ridge is, as it went to depth, the stratigraphy flattened out, and that's where the big Turquoise Ridge deposit was. The early mining on our stratigraphy at Turquoise Ridge was the Getchell open pit. And we feel that the zones we're drilling are more similar to the setting you'd find at the Getchell mine, so more vertical, and perhaps at depth the stratigraphy will flatten as it did to the north, and that's where we'd find more of these bedding parallel units. So as it comes up to the intrusive, it sort of thrusts up here at Granite Creek. So I would expect as we go to depth, at some point it will flatten, because it does to the north.
And where that transition is a pretty good place to be looking for big deposits, right, Ewan?
Yeah, that's where Turquoise Ridge is. So there's a major sort of vertical fault intersecting the flat-lying area. There's actually a mafic sill there that kind of, we believe is I believe is where the mineralization pooled. So hopefully we find a mafic sill as we go to depth as well, and that would make the analogy nearly identical.
And if you look at Granite Creek, where you're drilling to extend, the idea that it goes deeper, you're hitting a lot of continuity below that as well, right?
Yeah, the fault structures where we're drilling are still, they're not vertical, they're dipping to the east. But that's very similar to what the Getchell mine was. It was on a more vertical structure, and as I said, it flattened out at depth. And right now we're on the more vertical portion of the stratigraphy, if you want to compare the two. And that's at McCoy Cove, the bedding of the mineralization is more parallel everywhere. So that's why you look at the deposits and they're flat lying, and then that's exactly the same as the setting we have at Ruby Hill. So again, there are these bedding parallel Carlin style deposits. And really what we're doing is building 3 identical mines. It's 3 ramps to access more or less flat lying mineralization. We truck it to the same facility that we process. There's 1 processing facility, 3 mines that feed it.
And what strikes me, Ewan, is that we often hear in the mining exploration business that projects need to have new interpretation. I guess it matters a lot who's doing that new interpretation. And you guys are showing over and over again that, your reinterpretation of these projects has been quite successful.
Yes, and we did get, I'd say, pretty good education in Nevada. We were Nevada Gold Mines' only operating partner. Nevada Gold Mines is the biggest producer single producer in North America. They're a partnership between Newmont and Barrick, the world's 2 largest gold producers, and we were their only operating partner. So we got a bit of a unique education on how to find deposits here, what to look for. And we started applying that to other properties, saying, well, where else could we find this type of setting? And I think there's some other ideas we have in the back of our head, but we've got a lot on our plate right now. So we're going to just make sure we execute on our current plan, and definitely we're seeing these rising gold prices that we're seeing now are very beneficial to mining operations and profitability.
So your timing is pretty darn good.
Yeah, we've seen over the past several years, based on, I don't know, I'd say government policies mainly, and that we see in North America, we've seen inflation starting to run away, housing prices going to all-time highs, and inflation is very positive. Gold's the best hedge against inflation, and I think the world's tried to move a bit away from kind of gold as a currency. Bitcoins took a bit of the air out of the sails for gold, but now that we're seeing a few issues like Canada locking cryptocurrency accounts is not too favorable for that as a store of value maybe, and now we're seeing a switch back into gold. And with the inflation we're seeing, and markets being pretty toppy, I don't think there's ever been a better time to own gold. And I think you'll see us as time goes on. We're going to continue to use a trailing average as we assess deposits, because big companies out there saying we're doing our reserves at $1,250 is not really doing our industry a favor. And we're definitely not going to be promoting that the gold price is going down. I think the environment is for gold to be going up, and we expect to participate in that upward trajectory of the gold price.
And they've been using that price for a long time, and gold's, with its ups and downs, has stayed considerably above that. Well, they're devaluing their own assets.
Yeah, I think if you're using $1,250 price or below, I'd say anywhere below $1,500 as your price, I wonder why you're even in the industry. If you think this is a declining industry, get out of it. Go do something else. So we'll take it over. That's my view.
I like the sounds of that. Ewan, I'm going to close it on one comment that stood out to me. I often say that you guys are following the same path as a young Barrick. You mentioned Barrick and Newmont being 1 and 2 in Nevada. Are you plans to clip on their heels in the future? Is that the aim of the company going long term?
Yeah, we've stated publicly that it's our goal to be the #2 producer in Nevada. Right now, Kinross holds that. Kinross used to be #3, but when Newmont and Barrick got together to create Nevada Gold Mines, it became a single entity. So it's #1, Kinross is #2, and our goal is to surpass them over the next several years to become the #2 producer in the state. And then maybe we'll look forward at the big guys and say, well, how do we mine 3 million ounces a year here?
Well, I sure like the sounds of that, Ewan, and you've done another great job and been kind with your time to explain the tremendous potential of i-80 Gold. So thank you very much, and I'll close it off.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on again, and look forward to talking to you soon.
Yeah, well, there you go, folks. I started by saying I think the company's very undervalued. It's starting to get a better value, but Ewan kind of put it into the context of what they're aiming to be in the future. And companies of that size tend to have multi-billion-dollar valuations. This company is still a sub $1 billion valuation and is checking off all the boxes that they put their list of things they need to do to move in that direction. They're ticking off all those boxes aggressively. So if you want exposure to gold, I think i-80 is a great one for you to look at, and it has a lot less risk than a lot of these gold companies, but I think they still offer a tremendous upside potential. So on that note,
I'd like to jump in there. That's a good point. We didn't get across. So sorry, I know it's your closing notes, but one more thing I got to get in is that we're made in the USA. So I think what we're seeing here is with Russia and Ukraine is never, I think governments got away from recognizing that it's important to do it at home. Don't rely on other countries to do it. And that's where we are. We're made in the USA. We're in the process of applying for a New York Stock Exchange listing, and we want to be we want to be the go-to US gold company.
Well, and again, if you reach that goal, those companies have multi-billion-dollar valuations, and you guys are still sitting at under $1 billion, and that sort of emphasizes why I think so highly of i-80 Gold. So on that note, thank you very much. And as always, my shows are for information purposes only. It's important for you to do your homework, speak with your financial advisors, and I invite you to go to their website, read their news releases, read their corporate presentations, because they are very good at presenting what they're doing, where they're going, and they put themselves on like a scorecard of what they need to do. Not all companies put those scorecards out there because they like to hedge a little, but i-80 did that a few news releases ago, and just start checking off those boxes. Have a great day, and we'll talk to you soon.